Center. You're looking at the courthouse and the jail. In 1839, a man recorded only as Landon, enslaved and jailed as a runaway, was convicted of burning the Prince William County Jail in Brentsville. No witness saw him set the blaze. Within weeks, the court sentenced him to hang. Hello, I'm Deen Lateef, and I'm a volunteer at this important site. This is Brentsville Courthouse Historic Center, the county seat from 1822 to 1893. These grounds saw trials, elections, and executions. Today, they're part of the National Park Service's Network to Freedom for the stories they tell about slavery and the resistance. This courthouse and jail located in Prince William County are associated with the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom because they served as sites of arrest and jailing of runaway bondsmen and abolitionists from the 1820s to 1862, while Brentsville served as the county seat. At the time, enslavement in Prince William County was widespread to tend crops and to run dairy farms and animal farms with sheep, hogs, and cattle. Many new farmers from New Jersey and New York began moving into the area, and these farmers did not own bondsmen, so they bought slave labor from local plantations to work their farms. The Fugitive Slave Acts of 1793 and 1850 were enacted to threaten freedom seekers. Unscrupulous slave catchers would jail enslaved workers as runaways if they could, to collect on the large rewards for a capture. So now we are in the Brentsville jail. So in Landon's case, none of the witnesses actually saw him start the fire, nor was there concrete evidence against him. Merely a walnut-sized piece of burned cloth was found in a hole in one of the floorboards was used against him. Also, another enslaved man named Overton testified against Landon and said that he had given Landon a piece of lit coal to start the tobacco in Landon's pipe. Another person testified that Landon had been earlier prying at the window in his room. When the fire alarm was sounded, it was actually the room next to Landon's that had been burning for about half an hour. Yet, the witness who answered the fire alarm said that it began in the room where the prisoner was held. Thus, Landon was convicted and sentenced to death by hanging on Friday, April 4th, 1839. The indictment against Landon reads, a Negro man slave named Landon confined as a runaway the property of William Bowers of Fauquier County on the 10th of February, not having the fear of God before his eyes, but being moved and seduced by the instigation of the devil with force and arms at the county within the jurisdiction of this court, feloniously did with force and maliciously set fire to the jail of the county of Prince William, situated in the town of Brentsville, against the peace and dignity of the Commonwealth and against the forum of the acts of the General Assembly of Virginia. So now we are in the upper level of the courthouse in the magistrate's office. After trial, Landon was sentenced to death by hanging. However, his sentence was changed. Let's discuss this some more with Nate McDonald, who works at this historic courthouse. So, Mr. McDonald, what eventually happened with Landon's sentence?
That's a good question, Dean. So even as his fate was determined here in court, quite possibly in this room, as in the court of Oyer and Terminer that was used to try enslaved people, it's what we today think of as a bench trial. There's no jury, it's purely decided by the magistrate judges. There was already argument over what would happen to him. He was sentenced to hang, but even included in that sentencing was the recommendation for clemency, that the governor of Virginia reduce the sentence they had just passed. Part of that kind of insight that we have into how this decision was made comes from a petition by Justice Jesse Ewell Weems, who was one of the magistrates that tried Landon, and the son of Mason Locke Weems, the famous minister, tract writer, Washington biographer. And in his petition to the governor supporting clemency for Landon, which was not, they were not going to free him, but it was to reduce the sentence from death to something called transportation. And for Justice Weems's petition, he specifies that the only reason he signed the conviction for Landon was the promise that he would be reduced, his sentence would be reduced to transportation. And that in his mind, the distinction was in Landon's alleged crime, he had not burned the building what he termed as maliciously or with intent to just destroy the building, that he set it on fire in an attempt to escape. And to Justice Weems, that made a difference. The intent was, from his viewpoint, a very natural desire by Landon to escape jail, where he was being held, and continue to escape from slavery, versus just torching the property as an act of criminal arson. This gets into, we can't go through it all in one video, but at the time, arson was viewed, as it still is today, psychologically as well as just the criminal act itself, but it tended to be viewed kind of distinctly in arson that was done for something like an escape from the jail versus just burning a barn or burning a house or setting it on fire to kill someone, which, much like poisoning at the time, did have a gendered aspect, and that was viewed as a feminine crime. That arson was something that was done subtly, with subterfuge, in an attempt to deceive, and because you couldn't physically overwhelm someone, you resorted to arson as a crime. There's books written on the whole subject, but that's kind of probably what influenced Justice Weems and the other magistrates to ask for clemency, is that even though they are almost all to a man slave holders and slave owners themselves, they view it as a natural exercise to want to escape from slavery. So even as they condemn him to death for arson, they are already asking for him to have his sentence reduced, which it is. He's taken to the Virginia State Penitentiary, and in August of 1840, he appears on a list of 24 convicts that are appraised, because he is being viewed as property as an enslaved person, of 24 enslaved men and women who are valued by Richmond slave trader Richard Dickinson. And he puts Landon's value, agrees with the Prince William Court that values him at $900. Also notes that he's a blacksmith by trade. He has a professional skill, and that this $900 does not go to Prince William County, but it will go to compensate his master that he escaped from, William Bowers, who lived in Fauquier County. So Landon is progressing through the system. Transportation at the time, the law came into effect in 1801 following Gabriel's conspiracy in Richmond. Appropriately enough, a blacksmith who had intended to lead a slave uprising in Richmond. They were detected. One of the other people involved told on him to the authorities. They were arrested and hanged as well. But the law then clarified that, short of execution, a person could be sentenced and have their sentence reduced to transportation, which was to be sold outside the boundaries of the United States into slavery. The United States, Britain had banned the importation of slaves, but the French Caribbean colonies, large portions of South America, Colombia, Peru, Brazil, still did have slavery legally. The French would not outlaw it in their colonies until the 1840s and 1850s, and Brazil not even until the 1880s. So the idea is you will take these people who are convicted of crimes and you will take them somewhere else and sell them, get the value back from that. It does get tricky because the state repeatedly runs into the problem where slave traders will buy these enslaved convicts and then they will sell them within the boundaries of the United States, which violates Virginia law, and also most other slaveholding states have restrictions on that as well. They don't want you to bring someone who's been convicted of a crime to their state and sell them. So Landon and these 24 people end up in the hands of a man named William Williams. If you've seen 12 Years a Slave, in the case of Solomon Northup, it's the same man that ultimately sells Solomon Northup into slavery in New Orleans is William Williams.
Yeah.
And so while it's not, of course, the same circumstances, that voyage and journey that Northup talks about probably had not changed all that much in the intervening several years. So he's sold, taken from the Richmond Penitentiary, put on a ship in Norfolk with these 24 people. They're taken down to New Orleans to be sold by Williams in New Orleans and Alabama. The state of Louisiana discovers this. Someone informs on Williams. The state confiscates these 24 people from him. It's a lengthy legal battle, but for Landon, practically it means nothing has changed beyond he is still enslaved. He's just now in Louisiana. Those 24 people are seized by the state of Louisiana, and they're immediately put to work on Louisiana state projects. So clearing bayous, canals, the river, building levees, very unpleasant, heavy labor they can't find free laborers to do, so the state purchases or confiscates enslaved people to work on these projects. As a blacksmith, Landon may have had a role in doing some of the metalworking and other tool repair and things like that for these projects, but we don't know. By 1845, 10 of those people he was transported with were transferred to the state penitentiary of Louisiana. Practically, it means they're still working on a lot of these same labor projects. They're just now residing at the state penitentiary instead. Landon is not one of them. We don't know from that point on whether he died, as many of his fellow enslaved people did, working on these projects. Conditions are bad. You're in marsh water all the time, swamp water, rivers. There's wildlife, poisonous snakes, other things that are killing off many people working on these projects. But also we know that Landon, even before he left Virginia, was not in great shape. The description by Richard Dickinson, the man who basically valued him, put a price on his life, stated that he had been beaten in a horrible manner. We kind of suspect that happened here in Prince William, probably in the aftermath of the fire in the jail. He was either beaten or whipped in punishment before being taken to the penitentiary. Or it may have happened at the penitentiary. We don't know precisely, just that before Dickinson valued him, and that he had been badly beaten and badly injured. So his existing injuries, the lack of knowledge of antiseptic treatments and things like that, may have led to his death fairly quickly. But after that last mention of his arrival in Louisiana, we lose track of Landon. We don't really know what happened to him after that, but hopefully, maybe he survived long enough to reach emancipation in 1862 when Louisiana was seized by the Union, but we don't know.
All right. Thank you so much, Nate McDonald.
No problem,
And
Deen.
thank you so much for this interview as well.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So now we are in the Brentsville courthouse. So a surviving summary lists townspeople who testified, recollections of smoke and scorched cloth, but no eyewitnesses to Landon setting the fire. Still, the court swiftly convicted. In Virginia's slave law system, enslaved defendants face special courts and capital punishment for property crimes like arson. Brentsville conducted executions here through the 19th century. Thank you for traveling back in time with us to witness Landon's case and to acknowledge how far we have come as a society and as a judicial system. Now we know that the mere presence of a courthouse does not mean that justice prevailed within it. Please click on the description below for sources and additional information about this case. And please be sure to like and subscribe our video and visit the Brentsville Courthouse Historic District if you wish to learn more.